The events of this past week have been traumatic and very painful for a lot of people, and once again, it's provoked a lot of very difficult discussions. So right now, I want to take some time to talk to a friend who wrote a very, very good article about the situation on redstate.com. Make sure that you guys go and check it out. She is the culture critic and contributing editor of Red State, Kira Davis. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. It's so great to be here. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Hey. All right, so let's jump right into it. Talk about your thoughts on the events of this past week and what motivated you to write the article that you did in Red State.
Well, it's not really just the events of this week. This is something that we've been going through, it seems, over and over again, at least for the last few years that it's heated up. And I feel like each time, we kind of get further and further apart in American society. And a big theme in my life has really been forgiveness and kind of and grace, reaching out. And so the tone of my article was like, look, there's all kinds of reasons why this is happening. There are reasons that go deeper, than just police violence. There is culpability on all sides of this. But we have to be willing to stand back, each one of us, and just extend each other a lot of grace. People are angry, and there's a reason for that. And so instead of coming to the table with the mentality of your reasons are stupid, how about just listening? How about just hearing out the reasons, even if you disagree, just kind of steeling yourself to hear what you don't want to hear. And it's the same from, our side of the fence in the Black community. Like, we have to be willing to give people the space to say those things and to not immediately jump down people's throats when they say something that hurts us or ticks us off. Well, we have to be able to have these raw, honest conversations. And I haven't decided if we're ready for those or not. But I think the events in Charlotte show that there are a lot of things that have gone unsaid, and it's dredging up a lot of bitterness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What's been the feedback to the article? And the article, I believe, was titled "Another Unarmed Black Man is Shot in Tulsa. Don't Look Away." I'm looking at the link here, so I may have butchered the complete byline. But what's been the feedback from the article?
It's been, I would say, 50-50. Half of my audience is, and Red State is a conservative blog, so I had a lot of conservative readers, although I have a pretty wide audience generally. But half of them have been, thank you for writing this. I want to do better and be better. I want to know what steps I can take. I feel helpless. I don't like what I'm seeing, and I agree that it's time for everyone to extend a little grace towards each other. And half have been, but. There's always a lot of buts going around, well, if so-and-so would act right, then I'll do this. And so there's also a lot of anger, people feeling like I'm blaming folks, which I'm not. I actually think that there are things to be said on both sides of this issue that probably need to be heard, but we can't hear them at all because we're all just screaming at each other.
Right, absolutely. And do you think that, I know this is a very broad question, I've been trying to come up with the answer for this as well. I mean, do you think we'll ever be at a point where we can have that conversation that we really need to move forward without, because it seems like right now everybody is so divided among race, among class, among politics, among everything. Is there ever going to be a point where we can all kind of get together and really have that heartfelt conversation as an American family that we need?
That is like the $1 million question. I really don't know. A couple months ago after the Dallas incident at Baton Rouge, I did a Facebook Live video where I addressed that, and I was like, I don't know if we'll ever be at that place, because it takes being willing to hear some things that you don't want to hear. Like for Black people, we have to sit down and ask ourselves, where are we, what kind of tone are we setting in our own communities that we constantly need the police patrolling us? How do we teach people how to treat us? And on the other side is, how are you, white America, embracing bigotry or prejudice in ways that you don't even know? Or how is your refusal to look at this as a serious issue for a certain group make it more difficult for peaceful solutions to come forward? Those are all hard things to hear, depending on who you are and what you believe. And so I don't know if we have the ability to say those things without shouting each other down, and then hear those things without becoming immediately defensive. I don't know, but I have always been encouraged whenever I express those things by the number of people who come forward and say, I want that. I want to know where I'm wrong. I want to be better. And that's encouraging, and it's more people than I thought it would be, so I guess that's something.
Yeah, that's a start right there. We're talking with Kira Davis from redstate.com, and I have a question that I'm really curious to get your thoughts on. I know I made a Facebook post yesterday kind of trying to explain to people the perspective of someone else. I know you and I both know a lot of people in politics, and what I've noticed with some of those people is that a lot of the way that they kind of think in system terms. In other words, their thoughts are proposing things to fix the problem within the system, so on and so forth. And what I was trying to explain to people is you have to understand that you're dealing with a lot of people who have no trust or faith in the system at all anymore. So the first thing that we have to do before you can start proposing solutions that few people believe in is to restore faith and trust in the system. Do you find that mental blockage with some of the people that you know in politics, or are they kind of open to saying, okay, yeah, we know people don't trust us and we need to do something about it?
I definitely think there is a divide in how Black communities and white communities perceive the system, so to speak, especially police. I've had the opportunity to live in both communities. I'm biracial, and of course, my family, my husband and children are Black, and we've lived in the suburbs and we've lived in the hood. And I do know that in the suburbs, which is where we live now, in the cushy suburbs of Orange County, people perceive the police differently here. Like, they really have no concept of the police as aggressors or as people that you might distrust. They've never had those experiences, so they really do find it hard to relate. They're like, oh, you're just making it up. Like, for instance, a couple months ago, my husband got pulled over on his way home from work. I mean, this guy is like, he's got his cardigan sweater on, like he's coming from the grocery store. He's like, Black Mr. Rogers. It's like everything is up to date, in the car, and there's no tags, nothing. Everything's on the up and up, and gets pulled over right in front of the house. And his thing is like, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't have nothing to be worried about. And it was fine. Once he had the nerve to get out of the car, I was like, what are you doing?
Oh, Lord.
Stay in the car. He did get out of the car, but he had grocery bags. And as soon as they saw him, they were like, oh, do you live here? And made up some excuse about why they pulled him over, and then they went on their way.
Right.
But I tell that story to my neighbors and my friends here, and they're like, oh, yeah, that happened to me. When I just, they don't see those incidents.
Right.
So for them, and I think we have to be careful not to be too harsh in our judgment, because people don't have any experience with it. But then on the other side, you have a whole group of people, specifically in our urban centers, who do look at the police as people who can't be trusted and who are aggressors, and they're not sure what to think of the police. They need the police because we do have horrific crime rates in our inner city communities. They need the police, but then the police are also sometimes people who turn on those populations. So what do you do? It's a catch-22. It can really build up a lot of resentment and anger. And so even when you have cases where the police are simply doing their job, and it's the citizen that's the perpetrator of the crime, it still is impetus for a lot of anger because people are harboring this distrust. So I think your analysis is right, and I do think that is a divide that is so difficult to bridge because it's a matter of experience. And in this country, the black population is only 12% of the population of the country. So that's, statistically speaking, a small number of people who are experiencing this.
Right.
So their voices aren't as loud. Their experience isn't as common.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, you said that you're biracial. I am biracial myself. So I just wanted to know.
Biracial, high five.
Hey.
Secret handshake. Let's do a secret handshake.
Okay, gotcha. I just wanted to know, I know with me, these type of situations are always very tough because I am biracial. So it's like, you know, what this situation in particular is not tough because it is what it is. That was murder, period. But it can be very, I guess you could say a touchy situation with me personally, because I kind of sometimes struggle with, you know, what white people say and with what black people say. And then sometimes I agree with both. So I just wanted to know, with you being biracial, how do you deal with the daily struggles or the struggles of, you know, how you feel about the situations, I guess?
I'm so glad that you brought that up. You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because I got a message from a friend the other day she's a white woman, she's married to a black man, and they have a son together. And she was telling me, you know, I'm really frustrated because on one side I have a lot of people telling me that because I'm raising a black son that I should feel A, B, C, and D. And on the other side, you know, there are people who are telling me I should think this. And she said, so I've chosen not to comment publicly, but some people are kind of getting on my case, and it's really hurting my feelings. Like, I feel like I'm a bad mother because I'm not coming out and coming down hard on this issue. And it was the first time I really thought about how those of us who straddle this racial divide, how we really do perceive. I know for me, I'm sure you know, you grow up biracial, there's all kinds of challenges that come along with that. And depending on what kind of community you grow up in, the challenges can be unique. So for me, it took a long time to kind of come to terms with what that means for my life. But I think at the end of the day, if you guys don't mind me taking it to church for a minute,
no, go right
at the end of the day,
preach, that's always welcome here.
At the end of the day, I do think that God has called us to A, forgive as we have been forgiven, and B, to extend a measure of grace to every person. And what grace means is deciding not to treat someone the way they deserve to be treated, just like God did that for you. You know, you deserve hell, but God said, I'm not going to treat you the way you deserve to be treated. That's grace. You haven't done anything for it, but it's grace. And so that's kind of our example, and that makes it easier to kind of come to each individual situation with a sense of justice, of God's justice, and also with a sense of peace, you know, that there is common ground to be found. But I find it challenging. I mean, I feel all the same things that you guys feel and that other people feel. I just work to remember, you know, what we're called to do and how we're called to treat one another. And I know no change comes when everyone is on the defensive. And so I don't want to add to that. I don't want to be on the defensive all the time. So
right.
I try to work at that.
Yeah.
Okay, so as the resident white guy of the show, I noticed in the beginning of your article, you reference how you get messages from some of your white readers about how they're experiencing racial fatigue and that they're constantly unfairly being blamed for bigotry and racism. Now, my fellow co-host here and anybody who knows me in real life, I'm probably the farthest from actually being a white guy. My views, where I was raised, all that. But, you know, with such the racial divide that we have going on right now, even, you know, I can kind of feel, you know, when you reference that in the article, because, like, for example, this past week, you know, I work in the security industry, and I had to remove 2 people from the premises that I work at, both of which were African American, 1 male, 1 female. And it was within a 5 to 10 minute period, and both of them wound up just seeing me for my skin and, you know, whatnot, and deciding to call me racist, and I'm kicking them out because they're black and yada, yada, yada. You know, so it is getting tiring in the sense that, people want to look at me and just put me in that group of white people that are racist and bigots and Donald Trumps and,
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, and I did kind of address that in another article where I kind of chastised the Black community for making it difficult to bring the white community to the table. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do that by judging people, and that's why I say, like, I try to approach each conversation with grace and forgiveness, because you don't know. You're placing, and that's why I'm very careful to cry racism. I don't use that word a lot, because when you apply that word to someone, you're applying an entire history, an entire movement and ideology. And to make somebody responsible for that, for thousands of years of history and ideology, to make some guy who's at his job, just trying to pay the bills one night and just trying to keep, like, the nuts from pooping on the floor, to say that guy is responsible for all of these years of oppression, that's not helpful, and it's not fair. And it does. That's what it does. It creates, like I said, that racial fatigue. It's like, well, you know what? If this is racism, then everything's racism, and I don't care anymore.
Right.
Well, and with that being said, like, to kind of go along with that, I did kind of try to shut her down with kindness, and she didn't expect it. I looked at her, I was like, ma'am, it's sad to me that it's 2016 and we're still so focused on race. You want to pull the race card on me. That's not what Dr. Martin Luther King was fighting for, back in the day with the civil rights movements. And she just looked at me and kind of cocked her head like, I don't know if she kind of felt bad or if she realized that I was, I guess,
not the one, right?
Right. I'm not one of those white people. And it was just, like you said, it's not fair to put all those years of oppression and stuff like that on one person just because you feel a type of way because you're in the wrong for whatever you may be doing.
And like Darvio said, when he talked about how there is an inherent distrust of the system in the Black community, in America, there is an inherent distrust, I believe, between Black and white.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it does take sometimes a calm presence like yourself, like you did, just to say, hey, let's back up. Let's ration this out. You'd be surprised at how people have ever thought about it that way. You at least gave that person food for thought.
Absolutely.
And I know that a lot of people ask me, well, what can we do, Kira? How can we? There's just so much anger to go around. And I get it, and I wish that I could wave my magic wand and tell you how we're going to solve this. I personally don't think racism will ever be solved because it's sin, and we're in a fallen world.
I agree.
So it's just another sin. But I think the only way to solve it is and I hate to say this because it's such a disappointing answer, but it's like a one-to-one situation. It comes down to each of us, each one teach one kind of thing. It's a slow burn. I always say the problem with defending freedom is that freedom is a slow burn. It takes people spreading it like a virus, kind of like the desire for it. It doesn't promote itself. And so it's the same with compassion and grace. It doesn't promote itself. You've got to go make the case for it.
Absolutely. Kira, let everybody know how to get in contact with you on social media and where they can read your writings.
You can find me on Twitter at Real Kira Davis. That's Kria. And you can look me up on Facebook, and you can find all of my writing at redstates.com.
All right. And I just want to let everybody know I met Kira. We were actually at a school reform and civil rights and education conference. Kira is the real deal. Make sure that you read anything that has her name on the byline. You may not like some of the comments, but
no, you may not even like some of the articles, to be honest with you. So that is one thing. I don't pull any punches. It's my job to give my opinion, and sometimes people don't agree with your opinion. That's that.
Well, as long as, the fact of the matter is you're always real, you're always honest, and I think most reasonable people can respect that even if they don't agree. So thank you so much for spending time with us on the show today. We really appreciate your perspective and that fantastic article that you wrote.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun. I hope you have me back sometime.
Oh, we definitely will.